Frustrating. All right, we are live. Had a little tech difficulties. Zoom and Facebook did not want to cooperate today. We should be in the main Facebook page instead of the event. So I'm going to pull that up and make sure I let people know that we are going. Because when I did that before, I was able to do it right in the event page. But this, yeah.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah, I know. Facebook is now not seeing it live. That's what. Yes, there we are. Okay, we are good.
Nice.
I'm going to. All right. All right. Let's get. I wanted to share that. Yeah, just share it to the Facebook. Okay. My name is Todd, and this is the website Copy Framework office hours, and I am delighted to have Hannah Shamji. Did I say your name right?
Yes, you did.
Perfect. I keep wanting to say Hannah for some reason. I don't know
why.
My
parents actually call me that, and I don't introduce myself that way often just because it causes a bit of a stumble. But if it's easier for you, please go for it.
Hannah. You seem like a Hannah to me.
But, yeah.
Yeah. And you hail from the great city of Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah, right downtown.
I wish I could visit Toronto. For one of my best friends lives there and in that area, and I seem to meet people who are from the Toronto, well, Canada in general, but it seems like all the great copywriters in Canada, right? Maybe. There'd be some people who would argue with me on that. I think probably Rob Marsh and Kira Hug would probably argue with me on that. But anyway, yeah. So, in the thing about Hannah, now, do you consider yourself a copywriter or?
No.
Not really, no.
Yeah, more maybe like a former copywriter. I definitely dabbled, and I do understand the principles, and I've worked at a copywriting agency. So I know the ropes, but I wouldn't consider myself a copywriter.
Yeah, you like the research side of it more, don't you?
Yeah.
I remember very clearly when I first saw you. It was on a Tutorial Tuesday, that Copy Hackers does, and you told us that you had a counseling degree.
Yes.
And it boggled my mind in a good way, not a bad way. I was like, whoa, okay. Because I took a class in graduate school called short-term pastoral counseling. So I understand a smidgen of what you know from that. And you have used that to parallel, or I don't know if that's the right word, but parlay, that's the word I'm looking for, into a career of a customer interview and research.
Yeah. So my background academically, I have a bachelor's in psychology. And from then, even through my master's, very heavy in like academic research. So I've been doing qualitative research in the health space for quite a while. And then when I switched to marketing, it was like right around the same time that I decided to get some training in becoming a counselor or therapist. And it just layered in so well with the interviews, with the surveys, like asking more intuitive questions and really like listening to what people are saying, all of that kind of like human behavior. I mean, therapy is essentially like facilitating behavioral change, right? And selling is the same. So the layering in was really like a very perfect happenstance. Like I just kind of stumbled on it, and it worked out really well. The two kind of tug on each other quite nicely. Yeah, and
copywriters, they love to say they're amateur psychologists. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But so before I get started with the questions about your expertise, I want to ask you, these are 3 little questions, kind of for fun. If you watched any of the Copy Chat shows, I asked several questions. It won't be that. And that was kind of rapid fire. And, this is different. 3 little questions. So first of all, I like music. So what song or music do you have on repeat?
Probably eBay. I don't know if you've heard of them. Ibey. They are twins, and they are Cuban and something else. But the music is amazing. Yeah, you should totally check them up. So look them up. Anything from their album, I'll usually have it, and just
I B.
Ibey.
Oh, okay. So Canadian. So they probably have like really energetic type music.
It's I don't know. It's a mix of like some of it's Spanish. They also speak French. Some of it's French and English, and they have another language that they grew up learning. Like it's actually very like it's a good vibe. I don't really know how to place it.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. How do I prepare for online interviews like this? I'm like listening to music and I'm sitting there listening to, and I went down the rabbit hole of what would have been rock, lady rock back in the late 70s, early 80s. And there's a lady now named Lizzie Hale she's younger, probably in her early 30s, and she's covered some of that stuff. She's amazing. She's a throwback to the Joan Jett, Lita Ford type thing. And I was listening to her she kind of gets me going, but not just her, but other people. I was listening to stuff as I was getting going. So, so what is your favorite dessert?
Oh, that's a really tough one. Lately, ice cream, strawberry ice cream.
Yeah.
I can go to town on strawberry ice cream. Okay. Yeah.
And last little question: if you could do anything for a living other than what you're doing now, what would it be?
Oh, these are tough. Hey, I feel like I have to say something that's like super impressive.
I would say something super fun, like I want to be a Cirque du Soleil or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I think if I could do anything, assuming I had enough money, I don't know that I would be working in the same way. You know what I mean?
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. I think I would do some I do like workshops and seminars and about like the kind of counseling human behavior, but I would then spend more time like outside, like hiking and traveling a lot and on the beach and reading. And yeah, I'm kind of trying to build that life anyways. So yeah, you caught me right in the smack in the middle of me like figuring all of these pieces out.
There's a guy in town where I live. He ran a crepe shop for a long time here in town, and he just sold it to another couple, and now he's basically traveling all the cool places in the United States, outdoor related, like parks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him on Facebook, like, he was in Virginia in 1 week, and now he's in Wyoming, and it's like, dude, you're having the time of your life. It's just him and his dog, and they're just having a blast. And I'm like, I'm a little bit jealous, but good for you, buddy. So
my husband and we traveled for like a year and a half, and I'm with all this like COVID craziness. Yeah, certainly miss being able to travel more.
I admire the younger generation who are doing that while they can, and when you get to my age, you're like, man, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that, So I tell people, and especially now, because you can, so many of the jobs, not all of them, of course, but so many of them can be done virtually. So I mean, go do it while you're young. You have energy. Your health's good. Go do it. More power to you. That's what I say. I kind of wish I could be there with you, but okay. Let's get into what we're talking about. And if you're watching on replay and you make a comment, feel free to put hashtag replay or something like that, just to carry on the conversation. But Hannah is a customer insight research expert. I guess that's the right way of putting it.
Yeah.
You had some fancy title at the Copy Hackers agency. What was it? Lead researcher?
Copy Hackers, I was head of research, or sometimes we more call like conversion research. But now I would say, customer insights researcher is kind of the title that I go with.
That's what you have on your website. I think that's where I pulled that from.
Yeah.
So talk to me about interviews. Because this is where you get your research or the insights you get it from interviews. And so talk about why do interviews, even as maybe a smaller company, and how interviews can help our business.
So I want to share my screen, actually, a few slides that I've got, and let me see if I can.
Is it letting you do it?
I
There.
think application window. I think I have to open it in a different application window, maybe.
Is it something you can share with me, and then maybe I can share? You have it like on a.
Yeah, it's Google Slides. So I
Yep.
wonder
Can you email the slide to me, and I should be able to share because I have the bill. Hold on a second. Screen sharing is easiest with 2 monitors. Screen sharing works best on a good computer. Some screen. Yeah, I can share.
you should be able to share. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me send that to you. Tech stuff's always fun, hey?
Yeah,
There we
it
go.
would be much easier if the Zoom would have worked, and sometimes it just doesn't cooperate. So StreamYard is kind of a fallback, and thankfully it works most of the time. So
Yeah.
and Zoom and Facebook actually has a much more intuitive live feature, inside their own application now. And I haven't really actually used it, but I need to play around with it. Okay, I just got it.
You got it?
Yeah, okay, let's pull that up and okay. That's okay. Oh, you have like 6 slides?
I've got a couple, but they just sort of opened out. So there was more when you scroll down. It's just because I really don't like doing animation. I think it takes longer, so I'll like break out the slides. You'll see what I mean.
Is that sharing yet?
I don't see it.
Hold on a second. Chrome tab. Let's do this and do this. There we go.
There we go. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I don't know if you want to put it in like presenter mode.
Yep.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Okay, so I want to talk through these. I think it'll help to sort of like crystallize the actual why and the other points that we'll cover, and just really dive into like that first piece of like why do it? Why should you talk to your customers? You can have sometimes kind of like an intuitive sense. It sounds like a good idea to get closer to your customers since they're the ones that you want more of and you want to keep around. But there are more like concrete pieces that you can get from customer interviews that will really like serve you not only in marketing, in selling, in actually like putting together the copy and the content on your website, like the whole gamut. I mean, these interviews can really, really serve pretty widespread. So I'm going to walk through a couple points, both for the side of copy and for the content. And you'll start to get a sense too and see how they sort of overlay. Can you go to the next slide? Perfect. So first is buying and sign up objections. It's very, very easy to identify these kind of at a broader level, like price is too high, or people don't have time, or switching is too hard. But when you actually have a chat with a customer, or I also like to chat with folks who like just recently stopped being a customer as well, you can really dig into like what their thinking was, why they actually stopped buying, why they actually decided against or resisted even making the decision to buy. And you start to get a sense of like, what is it that they need to hear? What kinds of things are they looking for? And then that becomes information that you can feed into the copy on the page, even the content really. Like as we go through, you'll see a lot of these kind of overlay a blog post about addressing some common objections and helping people navigate those. It's a very easy way to start to speak to these customers more and more in any platform, and really kind of understand what to say to them, because you know what they're thinking and what's kind of standing in the way of their buying decision or even their sign up decision. Next slide. Sticky features and benefits. So I'm lumping these two together, but they are quite different. And this is also really helpful to understand, like, what are they looking for? What are the features that they have in their mind as sort of like presets? Like, I need a mattress that is a hybrid, for example. And then also, what are the actual benefits? So people don't necessarily buy a mattress because they want a mattress. They buy it because they want a good night's sleep. They want to wake up feeling refreshed in the morning. They might have aches and pains from their current mattress. All of those would fall into the benefits category. And you can kind of use these like interchangeably. So you've got the buying objections, and then you can address them with a benefit. And you can do that, again, in content, in copy, on the page itself. It'll really help you suss out themes. So the goal in these interviews is always to you want to talk to around like 8 to 10. I know with jobs to be done, they typically say around 7. I like to talk to 8 to 10 customers. And what you're doing is you're asking them very similar questions so that you can start to pull out themes. You'll hear a lot of overlap. You'll identify those buying objections and what they like about the product, what really stands out as a benefit pretty early on. And once you have those themes, you can start to filter that into the copy or into the content.
Yeah, that makes sense. People, people are always looking for, content ideation. That's a big deal. Content ideation. And I would tell people, and this is kind of a piggyback on what you're saying, is like, what are the top 25 questions people ask?
Yeah.
But if you go in and do interviews, now I'm interested in this 8 to 10 interviews. Are you talking about like actual interviews or surveys and interviews, or just one or the other?
So surveys are, ideally you're getting a much bigger sample. You're looking for you can do a survey and have like 50 plus responses. Interviews, those are going to be like the one-on-one conversations. If you can't do 8 to 10, do as many as you can. You definitely want to do at least like 3, more than 3, so you're not having too biased of a response. But even if you're able to, sometimes it's also helpful to talk to people in the company who have a customer-facing role. So you're not necessarily getting like direct from the customer in that case, if that's not possible, but you might be talking to like the salesperson and understanding what themes come out of their conversations with sales. But yes, ideally you want to talk to 8 to 10. You'll hear some folks say 7, but often not less than that if you really want like robust data. And then, you can kind of work with what you've got as well. It's never, really depends on the client.
Ideally, you want to interview customers, but if that's not available to you, you can interview front-facing employees like sales and customer support.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to do both. And just kind of layer the two in. Often when I talk to sales or customer support, they give a really nice framework. They often know exactly what objections come up pretty quickly. And then I can drill down even more specifically into, if you hit the next slide, you'll see into like behaviors and motivations, and really start to understand like the customer's perspective. So you can kind of pick and choose based on what you've got there, but those are the 2 buckets that I would tap into.
Hey, one other question, and this may be something you address later, so if it is, just tell me that. But do you find that you have to offer some kind of incentive to get people to interview with you?
Yeah, so it depends on how. I've had clients where the customers are just so engaged that they're more than willing, and it would almost sort of interrupt the relationship and the dynamic to offer an incentive. I've also had instances where it's very, they're not used to engaging with the client, and so offering an incentive really helps. I would go and check in where the client's at with it and what their take is. If they're not sure, you can probably, like, if a client will know if their customers will respond or don't need an incentive. If they're not sure, chances are you can benefit from an incentive. And just something like a $25 Amazon gift card works really well. If you can offer something from the product, like a free month, if that's a fit, nothing over like $40. it tends to start biasing responses, and they want to be very pleasing, and you don't want to muddy the data that way.
Right.
But yeah, a $25, $25 Amazon gift card works really well as well.
Yeah, I'd wondered about thresholds, like a minimum to a maximum. So maybe 25 to $40 value of something.
Yeah, exactly. And I have had an instance where a client's given like $100 gift card. But these are always kind of outlier cases. It's not something that I recommended, but they felt that, the threshold of 50, 40 wasn't sufficient for their audience. So it is dependent, but you do want to be mindful. If you are giving more, you want to be really careful of like how much, that you're not creating an environment where they feel like they need to please and sort of earn that amount and say things that are very pleasant when maybe that's not actually their experience.
Right. Got you. Okay.
Yeah. You can hit the next slide. All right. So in terms of content, this is like a huge source of content. Once you start to sort of like engineer the way you're approaching these conversations, you'll pick out kind of really juicy topics. Customers will introduce things that maybe the clients haven't thought of, that maybe aren't top of mind for the clients, but they're really sort of like nagging questions. When you have a conversation with them to understand kind of their buyer journey, you'll identify like what their roadblocks were, what were their hesitations, how did they overcome their hesitations, all of like pretty much anything that they're talking about, from the point of like competitors and first looking at the product all the way through to making a decision to buy and sticking around. You can pull out topics for content from all of those like articles about like 5 ways to do this, or 5 questions to ask when you're considering buying X. They fall really nicely into like from customer data. So you'll get that insight that will just make it easier, I think, to start like thinking like a customer. And if you were the one buying, what were the questions that you might have? And you'll find that all of those can make individual blog posts with a little extra insight and research from you once you pull out those themes. Next slide. Pains and needs. So this is kind of one of the buckets, like the categories. So you've got like objections and you've got benefits, and those are further along the buyer journey. But then you have pains and needs, which are in the beginning. So like, what are they struggling with in the first place that they're even considering this product? What do they need from this product to even step further into the buyer journey? So these are just other categories that you can get really clear on. There's a big, I would say, I don't know if debate's the right word, but a big back and forth between, it's difficult to ask customers why they buy, or because often people don't really know. Like, we buy for a myriad of reasons, and we might have our pros and cons list, but then the actual decision happens separately in kind of a singular moment. It's something else that sort of nudges them along the way. Or you'll have instances where a company will flat out ask a customer, like, would you buy this product? And anytime you start veering into like future and hypothetical questions, people are horrible at predicting the future. New Year's resolutions is a perfect example of that. Like, we think we're going to have them for the year, and it's really good if we have them through to February.
2020 turned out to be something nobody predicted, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, if you had a resolution to like, I'm going to travel a lot this year, that was kind of kiboshed with all of the 2020 things.
Unless you're like my friend Spencer, who's going out and visiting parks and stuff where you can stay just socially distanced and hang out with your buddy, and that's about it. Yeah. So it's really important to kind of help your customers knows their problem, often better than we know their problem. So it's a really great space to figure out, like, what is it that they're looking for? What do they need? What's their kind of decision matrix in their mind? And interviews will help you tap into all of that. And voice of the customer you can spread across, whether it's in your copy or in your content. I have many times used a messaging like an actual quote from a customer to populate like a headline
It might be a call to action. You can even pull testimonials or figure out how to phrase a particular benefit because that's how your customers phrased it. They've got some distance from the product, which really helps. So they're not kind of thinking with the same lens as you are. And they often have very like accessible language because, that's how they're processing things.
Yeah, I'd never heard of voice of customer until I started hanging around the copy hackers group. And that's where I first learned about voice of customer research and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, what you're talking about is how you get the voice of customer research and that data. So,
yeah, it's a very useful lens, and I find with clients too, like it's a useful tactic to get their buy-in on something. So it's one thing to say like, hey, customers are struggling with price, for example, or perhaps they don't have enough money to afford a particular product. It's very different to bring that to life and like show them, well, actually, this is what the customer said. This is how they said it. It changes the tone of the conversation, right? They kind of have more buy-in and more investment in the themes that you're bringing out.
I think Nikki said about you, it's like magic. And it's what your testimony on your webpage. And I went ahead and wrote that into a headline for my email, one of the emails that I sent out about this particular office hours.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it's like voice of customer data is so, you could just repurpose it, right? Like it's very easy to filter it in. And it's funny because she was talking about the playbooks that I put together. And so then you took her voice of customer data and it's like a chain of like the telephone pole. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to go into the next piece?
Yeah. Is there a slide, more slide?
Yeah.
Do's and don'ts. Okay, good.
So this is like a quick kind of cheat sheet. There are a few pointers that will just really help you make these swift and easy. And if you're new to this, I've heard a lot of like, I've done customer interviews and I don't know if I'm doing them right, or they're very frightening and scary and intimidating. And that newness, talking to a stranger, is absolutely normal. And it's actually a good thing. It just makes you a little more alert and on your toes with asking questions because you will need to guide that conversation. And that's why the first thing on there is have an interview goal. An interview goal could be is separate to like what you want to do with the interview data. So it wouldn't be something like from the interviews I want to like write copy for a homepage, but it might be like I need to understand what the buying objections are and what people really care about and why they choose this particular product. You can have like those 3 goals, and they typically come in the form of questions. But really having those anchors, like what is it that you're trying to understand from the customers specifically? Once you have those goals and you have a list of questions that you want to ask your customer, you want to practice out loud. This sounds kind of cheesy and like a throwaway point, but it makes a big difference. Like anytime I'm feeling nervous about talking to a customer, I'll practice how to kick off the call. What am I going to say? What are the points that I need to hit? I need to ask their permission to record. I need to give them some context about what this is, but not tell them too much. I need to make them feel comfortable, build rapport really quickly. So I'll practice that stream and even practice follow-up questions. Like in the mirror, you'll notice if you feel comfortable, it communicates that comfort to the customer. And often the questions that you're asking them are not questions they've even asked themselves or had to answer before. So the more that you can guide them there and make them feel like they can share openly, the easier that conversation will be.
Practice out loud with yourself, or do you like get a friend or a family member to?
I would say, I think you can go either way. I mean, I'm someone that does a lot of like in front of the mirror practicing by myself. I prefer that, but more than helpful to practice with someone as well. If you feel like that way you can also get the dynamic. And have like, if you were actually to play out the whole interview, that would be helpful too. But if you don't have that luxury, practicing by yourself helps a ton.
Or I guess you could use your pet.
Yeah, I feel like people have gotten so creative with like how to talk and how to be more social, even though we're all like bungled up in our homes.
Yeah.
And asking follow-up questions. So this is a really, really big one. You'll notice that people don't often answer the question that you ask them. And that's not because they don't want to, but often they'll have like their own agenda. They want to say something, they want to share something with you, they have an experience with the product that they have already tapped into because they know that's what this conversation is about. And follow-up questions will be what will get you kind of under the surface. So you might have a script of questions, but include in that script what your follow-up questions are. It'll really, really help you dig deeper, because you'll be able to sort of like navigate the conversation and also slow it down a little. It's very easy to kind of run through your questions and just think that like I need to ask the questions and then the interview is done. But you do need to like step into the conversation and slow it down and ask about things. Ask a natural follow-up question that you might have and build that muscle. All of the gold that you're looking for is always at the end of a follow-up question. It's very, very rare that you'll get that insight right off the cuff. If you do, that has more to do with the customer and less to do with anything else.
Makes sense.
And don'ts. Don't overscript. So this is something that I've worked with some folks on too. Like, overscripting is helpful to think it out. Like, what are the questions that you want to ask? But then lean on your research goals, your interview goals, and have your big bucket questions, and don't feel like you have to stick to the script. A lot of the power of this conversation is going to come with, if you hit the next slide, it's going to come with like following your curiosity more than the question. So once you understand, like, I'm clear on my research goal, I need to figure out why they chose this product and what their buying objections are. Those are my 2 pillars. I've written out some questions, and now like step into the conversation. It doesn't mean you have to memorize your questions. You can have them there with you, but listen to what the customer's saying. And if they say something that is kind of pulls up another question, it intrigues you, you're a little confused because you want some more insight, lean into that. That is going to be a bigger strength for you than the actual questions, assuming, like, because the goal here is you trust that you've kind of prepared, you know where the goal is, of what the goal is of the interview. So now just really follow your curiosity there. And I have a last don't here, like, don't ask why. This is not a hard and fast rule, but you will notice that more often than not, when you ask someone why, they can get a little on the defensive. It might be a really, really tiny amount, but why is a question that implies that there's like one answer. And now I'm asking you why, and you actually have to prove something to me. Like, why didn't you clean your room? Or why did you leave the dishes out? There's a slight like accusation almost in that. And a lot of it can disappear if you swap out why for a what. So like, what made you decide to buy this product? What made you choose this product over another product? So you're still asking why, but if you don't lead with why, it kind of softens the tone a little bit. I often find when I ask a why question, the first response is like, I don't know. There's a different action that you're inviting people to do. So if you ask why, they kind of have to search through, like, I need to prove this point, I need rationale, I need justification. If you ask what, I have to actually just recall information. So the exercise is quite different. And I would really strongly, if you ever do a survey, steer clear of the why questions if you can, because you're not there as a person to facilitate. I'll totally ask why questions if I feel like the rapport is there. If I have a good relationship with that person, you can be a lot more direct and they won't feel as put on the spot by it. But if you can steer clear of why, you'll actually get a lot more juicy insight.
Interesting. Was it Ryan Levesque has got the book about the why method, right, or whatever? I don't know how that plays into your saying don't use why in customer interviews, but
it's a tricky one because I think the goal is to ask why. So it's less about not finding out why. Like, ultimately, you want to know what your customer's why is. Absolutely. But in an interview and in a conversation, when you're trying to build rapport really quickly with a stranger, this is something that came from the counseling world. That you'll find that you don't have to dig as much if you can work around the why. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask it at all, but and a lot of people still do, but it's a little kind of technique that will help you slip under the layer and get people to recall the information that you're looking for from the get-go. So you're still asking why, you're just not necessarily always using that word.
Well, and it does make sense what you're saying, though. Why is something that you could use with a friend or a family member or somebody you know really well, but could become more accusatory for somebody you don't know, the customer. So now if I was interviewing Rhonda, I might say why, because I know Rhonda.
Sure. Yeah.
But a customer I don't know, I might, want to not say why. So.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of get a pulse on the situation. So I'll definitely use it with a customer if I feel like there is the rapport there. If it's a little uncomfortable, if they seem a little bit shy, you kind of make a judgment call. But sometimes you do want to be more direct, and your tone and your energy is very different. And you can ask, like, why is that? Right? There's a different energy of like curiosity. So it's less of like, don't ever ask why, and more of like, be mindful of if the situation would actually benefit from a question like that, or if there's a softer way to get to the insight that you're looking for.
Yeah. I like the not over scripting and go ahead and following your curiosity, because you do find yourself in the actual interview rather than you're just asking a series of questions. And
yeah.
I've always kind of followed that, like when doing interview for a podcast or whatever, because, and then sometimes what happens is you end up not asking the questions you had scripted, but in the meantime, you've gotten some really good stuff,
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't get it all in one. Actually, there were more questions. I don't know if we followed up on that. You've covered a lot of these. I think, what can I learn from interviews? I don't know if you wanted to say anything different than what you already have.
No, I think that I would say that interviews are more comprehensive than we think. Like, you can actually get away with doing interviews, and maybe you don't do surveys. Maybe you don't, it's just a really strong source of data. So you can cover a lot of things. You can cover just benefits, just content, course topics, the customer journey, the timeline, the decision sort of matrix. You can pull a lot from there. There's very little I can think of that you can't actually get. But the goal, again, is like, you do want to have a representative sample. So talking to 1 or 2 customers, if that's all that you are able to do, you're going to benefit from talking to like customer sales, support, that kind of thing. And to get like a more representative sample of the fuller customer. But if you can't, and you can talk to more customers, then there's really it will be such a source of insight. And I often encourage like a survey that goes out, where at the end of the survey you ask folks to do an interview. And I've done this with clients where like you can kind of have it on repeat. Yeah. So you always have like a pool of customers that have self-selected and opted into doing the interview, and there's a lot less friction that way as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I think you really, the other one was how do I get customers to agree to interview? You really touched on that, but if you want to say anything else
I'm gonna drop. I just wrote an article on this, and I'll share the link with you, and we can drop it in the comments on this thread. And it goes through like the exact templates that I use to ask for an interview, and how do you actually talk to the client as well to get them on board, because you're probably going to have to go through them and they're going to have to send it out. So including like what do you say? How do you frame it? Do you include a booking link? How do you frame it to the customer so that they are actually willing, given that they don't have any context? So there are templates in there that you can pull from and use and kind of copy paste and adjust as you need. But those are the ones that I've used and work really well.
That come out of your playbook?
So they've come out of, so the playbook is more the insights synthesized. But these would be like the tee up to the playbook. So how I've gotten with clients, like what is it that I do? Because this can be kind of a tedious process of like, I have to now get the client to buy in, and is this going to take a while? And what do I say to the customers? And so I just sort of tried a bunch of things, templated out, and overdoing them for so long. I've got a couple methods that work. So all of that's in the article, and I'll link to it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the last question was, and you did the do's and don'ts of customer interviewing, so I don't guess there's really anything to, unless you have something else you want to add. I thought you were really insightful and also very not overly hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tried to pull out pieces that, I mean, it really is a conversation. So just leaning into that, know what you want to get from it, and then just step in and practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So you got, I'm bookmarking this. So I would imagine that in your career, you've probably done this for maybe businesses that are a little bit bigger and you know, they have the funds. So if we have a lot of agency, you know, small agency owners, that kind of thing that are in the group. So they are likely doing it either for their own business or helping their client with this. Is there a way do you feel like you can meet that context with all this? It translates pretty well, you think?
Oh yeah. So I've worked with bigger companies, but also like startups, and much smaller companies that sometimes they're a little nervous because they don't have maybe a huge customer base. But the way that you reach out to the customer is going to make a big difference, right? So because you want to make this like a personal invite, a personal request. So often it will, like the email that you'll see in that article is written in a way to imply, as it should, that like you're kind of handpicking who you want to chat to. But it's absolutely translatable. I would recommend, so typically to land like somewhere between 8 to 10 interviews, I'll email like 3 times that amount. Just so that, you know, people aren't able to book or they don't see the interview, et cetera. And then I'll back end do the interviews over the course of like 1 or 2 days. But in the case of a smaller company, you might want to just email the people that you're actually looking to chat with, so you don't maybe exhaust so many customers, and kind of go through it one by one that way. But it's absolutely translatable. I would say that if you're worried that you're not going to do enough interviews to make them useful, like that's never going to be the case. If you can only do one now, do that one now, and maybe you can do another one, you know, next month or next week or whatever the case may be. But you will always benefit from talking to the customer, and all of these rules will still apply for sure.
You talk about the logistics of doing an interview. Do you like record the interview and get transcriptions, and how do you recommend? That's what I would think anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always record, but I always ask if I can record right before we hit record, just so they know the recording's not actually going anywhere. I've never had anyone have any issues with that or say no. And then what I do is I'll get it transcribed because I want the actual like voice of customer data, but I'm always taking notes as well. So there'll be a couple times I take notes during the interview itself, if something like really stands out and I want to remember it. But then I do a quick little like brain dump after the fact, because there's something that happens. You make some kind of connections in the conversation that you might forget later on. There's something with like the recency of it just happening, and you have time to like digest what they said, and maybe they were talking and they said something in a certain way that really stuck with you, or it was a different perspective. So I'll take a couple notes afterwards, and then I'll look at the transcript as well. And then those are the themes that I'll pull out, like, oh, I know that they talked about price here. And I'll pull out all the language where they talk about price and kind of filter it. And I use a spreadsheet to track everything and organize like all of the price comments and if there are benefits or objections, etc.
Yeah, I have a hard time taking notes while I'm doing an interview like that, and I don't know if it's just me or if that's the nature of I don't. Guys are not really good at doing two things at once, so maybe I don't know, but that's why I have really gone to recording them
Yeah.
because it just like I can go back and get the transcription.
Yeah,
But I hadn't thought
absolutely.
about the brain depth. I think that's brilliant.
It's very helpful. And even if there's something of like, um, even if you don't, because I like when I get more comfortable with a particular client, let's say I'm like 3 interviews in and I've got 5 more to go. By then I'm familiar with the questions a lot more. I don't need the script at all.
Yeah.
But I'll do something like maybe I have a bit of a like I'll write B like if they really say something cool about benefits, I'll just like jot down benefits or I'll jot down like objections so I can see if there's like a leaning in the interview. And then when I do my brain dump afterwards, I'll fill in because you can often remember exactly how someone said it because it just happened. So that's really valuable too.
That's just something I hadn't thought of. Sometimes when I'm done with the interview, like I want to like leave it completely and kind of, so, there's a part of that, but I can see taking, a notebook or something and saying, some stuff you just offhand remember.
Yeah.
And like and might help you when you go back and look at the transcript. I hadn't thought about that. I will keep that in mind
Cool.
going forward to try to learn to do that better. I do agree with the leaning in and really just getting into the interview, and because I think when I depend too much on a script, I think that's when I lose the authenticity of who I am. So even when I do presentation, I told somebody the other day I'll probably do better just doing it off the points and that kind of stuff. But I can't script it out. I've never done a scripted video, so maybe one day I will, but I just never have. I figure Todd comes out better when Todd just talks, and for better or worse, I guess. So anyway,
I think you got to find your own rhythm with it, like how you navigate the conversations and where you can kind of bring out your strengths as well, for sure. Yeah.
Well,
very cool.
Fantastic information. I know Rhonda is like, I'm bookmarking this, and so I know some people are going to really get a lot of information out of this.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yep. And I noticed the last slide had, information about how people can reach you. And Hannah's very active on Twitter. And right now she's dropping these little gold nuggets of like one sentence or 2 sentence tweets with incredible value in it alone. So, and she does several of them a day. So I'm just like, there she goes again. She's on fire. And also she has a YouTube channop where she is doing breakdowns on questions and surveys.
Yeah. And you can, we can drop, can we drop the link?
Yeah.
And everything is kind of through my Twitter. So you can find me there and the link to the survey teardowns as well and my website and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up here. So yeah, I will make sure we have that in the thread as well. And I hope I didn't take too much of your time. I do appreciate you. I do highly recommend Hannah for podcast interviews. If anybody's listening and they're looking for somebody,
Thanks,
I know she's wanting to do some of that, and would be. I hope Jason was able to book you on his podcast. So
yeah, sounds fun.
All right. Cool. Well, appreciate you joining us, and I'm gonna call it a day. So
all right, thanks guys. Bye.